The Rebel Capitalist Show.
How much crypto have you seen, or crypto adoption, I guess, in South America, in these smaller countries, the developing countries?
Well, it is on the one hand, it is significant. On the other hand, it isn't. I mean, there's a growing informal economy that is using cryptos as a form of savings, or in even more extreme cases like Venezuela, for example, if
Right.
you have just one little GPU miner and this can like bring you or help your family survive, basically. So there is adoption on the low end, but there's not the kind of adoption that you see in more developed places where you have startups and lots of businesses and applications being developed at a significant level. There's very little of this happening in Latin America, but there's on the grassroots level happening a lot more than, say, in the developed world. So it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. Do you see Africa adopting it faster than South America?
I mean, I'm much more an expert on Latin America and Asia than I am on Africa. But what I see in Africa, there are certain places like Kenya, Tanzania, and a few others, Uganda, I think too, where there's quite a bit happening. And there's also a little bit of a local ecosystem with apps and infrastructure being developed there. But I don't have a really detailed insight where I can have a really solid opinion on this. I just know there's quite a bit happening, but in terms of the depth on how much is really going on, it's very difficult to assess from afar. Okay,
got it. So where do you see the road going with crypto, and maybe more specifically Bitcoin? I don't know if there's some that you're bullish on, some that you just completely dislike, or can you just kind of get me up there?
Yeah, obviously I have a lot of opinions on a lot of different things when it comes to that, because what we do in our fund is, if you look at the blockchain ecosystem in general, you have different layers to it. You have like all the hardware elements, be they mining chips or point of sale terminals, all kinds of stuff. And you have like a core infrastructure layer with like databases and stuff like that. And then you have the main blockchain layer with the different blockchains. You have a protocol layer with more specialized protocols that do other things. And then on top, you have all the assets and applications. So what we do in our fund is we really focus on the protocols and the blockchains that all the rest is being built upon, because that's where over time the most value will accrue. So we're really deep in the weeds with that. But more broadly speaking, it's now really just Bitcoin that is hitting this exponential curve in the adoption. I mean, every technology goes through an S curve, and right now we're hitting like the exponential phase. So that's why I think this cycle will also be a super cycle, where we also have for the first time the institutions coming in. I mean, it's almost on a daily basis now that you hear of some big company putting part of the treasury in Bitcoin. So in terms of the general awareness, it's still very much at the Bitcoin level with the individuals and also with the institutions. They haven't even realized yet all the stuff that's happening with DeFi, with the open decentralized financial system that is now evolving rapidly. So there's a lot going on at many levels.
How do we get from a standpoint of a store of value or a digital asset to something that's used in transactions?
Well, this is mainly a technological limitation. So I always like to compare it to the internet. I mean, the internet went through the same S curve, and in the 90s with dial-up or DSL connections that were really slow, you didn't have video streaming and all the stuff that we enjoy now. And it's the same with blockchains. If you look at Bitcoin is the Model T of blockchains. Yeah, it's 11, 12 years old. It's really slow, and of course, in terms of the store of value application, that comes with its benefits, but it doesn't really allow for it to be used as money in day-to-day life. I mean, you can't buy a coffee with Bitcoin, right? It's not what it's designed to do. I mean, maybe initially it was the aim, but it's simply not there yet from a technological perspective. But that's exactly what I do with my research, is because there is a lot happening in the development of this technology, and there are new next generation high-speed blockchains where you have almost instant finality, a transaction confirms in less than a second, where you have all the capacity for thousands and thousands of transactions a second. So where you, and the fees also, I mean, don't forget the fees, the fees on Bitcoin, like to send a transaction, $10, $20, $30, you can't buy a coffee with that. But with some of these newer high-speed blockchains, it's a fraction of a penny, it's almost instant. And it's just a matter of the whole ecosystem developing and maturing more. So it's just, there's all this potential there, but it really takes like 1 or 2 decades to really shine.
Right. And how do you see this being adopted, or how does the transition look in a country like Colombia?
Well, I mean,
the reason I say that, Marco, because once you even get out into Envigado or Laureles or any, Strata 5 or Strata 4, I mean, what would you say? Like 99% of the transactions are done in cash. So how do we make that transition? Is it kind of like the Nigerian model where they just traded back and forth on their cell phone? I know that became very popular. Do you see that happening in Colombia, or how do you see it?
I think you're referring to M-Pesa, which I think is in Kenya. Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, that's exactly the thing. It's not so much that we need to bank the unbanked. We need to unbank the banked, right? It's the other way around. Right. And basically, it's just like with cell phones. In Africa, you didn't have landlines. People skipped that and went straight to cell phones. And it's the same with the unbanked population. They're probably not going to have a bank account. They're going straight to cryptos. And you see that in certain markets already. And unsurprisingly, the highest crypto adoption that I'm aware of, that I know personally, is in South Korea. And in South Korea, you have something really interesting happening now with a stable coin that is tied to the Korean won. And a lot of big companies in South Korea got behind that, like the local equivalents of Amazon and so on, like the big e-commerce companies. So this is growing massively now with an app on the cell phone, and then you just pay with a Korean won stable coin. And something similar will happen now, especially as we talk about DeFi, because if we zoom out and look at the big picture, basically we have the legacy financial system where you're restricted and limited in so many ways with all this KYC and AML bullshit. Right. Yeah, you have to trust middlemen. I mean, you don't own your money. It's sitting in a bank somewhere and they can withdraw access to your money at any moment. And it's slow, inefficient, and all these things. So what we have now with the blockchain ecosystem with DeFi, and DeFi stands for decentralized finance, is basically all the building blocks in the financial system, be they loans, be they derivatives like options, be they savings accounts, insurance, all these things, we have them now being redeveloped in an open, permissionless manner where nobody can prevent me from doing business with you, and where there's no middleman, where everything is direct, and where you have also much higher interest rates. I mean, in a savings account now, basically you earn nothing. In DeFi, you can easily get 10% or more. And so what we see now is this evolution of rebuilding the financial system in this open manner. And there will be a tidal wave of money once the general population wakes up to that all of a sudden they can make 10% on their savings, and they have a lot less hassle. Everything is cheaper, more efficient, and easier. So there will be a big tidal wave of money moving over there, and this will happen at all levels, in the developing world just as much as in the developed world.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say, that in all those stratas and neighborhoods, areas that I was talking about before, 99% of the transactions are cash, but every single one of them has a smartphone.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Most of them might not have a bank account, but everybody has a smartphone. Yeah. So there's no technological barrier. It's just the software has to get there from a usability point, and just the whole awareness in general has to grow. But now that we're hitting this exponential wave, we're getting there. We're getting there fast. So this has all manners of consequences for the legacy financial system, and it's going to get really interesting throughout this decade for sure.